Well, greetings everyone to God's Unchanging Word in this week's edition for News Nuggets and Insights. Today is Friday, March 31st, 2017. I want to talk about something today that's very, very important. In fact, we have a live audience with us today. We're filming right after our Sabbath services. We're filming a little bit earlier. So today's edition is going to focus on the terror attacks that took place this past week in the United Kingdom. I want to tie these attacks into some biblical pieces of information that I think we all need to be aware of for what's going on. On March 23rd, 2017, 5 people died, including a police officer and the attacker. Police say at least 50 people were injured and 31 required hospital treatment. 2 of those remain in critical condition, one of whom has life-threatening injuries. By the time you get this, there may be more people who have died, and they may have a lot more information. Our purpose for bringing this out today is not just to bring out the terror attacks, because you can pick this up on the news anywhere. But I want to tie this into some biblical warnings that God gives us of what's taking place today around the globe is totally going unnoticed by our society. In addition to those who were wounded were 2 police officers who were still in the hospital at the time of this taping. The assailant was Khalid Mossad, who was 52. He's born in Kent, and he changed his name from Adrian Russell Ajayo, and he was Muslim radicalized. And here we have today, all you need to be as a terrorist to be radicalized is rent a car, get a few knives, and you go out and kill and maim dozens and dozens of people. And there's really no way to stop all of this. And this person was on the radar. So in other words, they knew that there was a problem with this person, but they can't do anything till it's too late. In other words, once you kill somebody, well, then we can go arrest you. But until then, all we can do is monitor you when it goes on. The amazing story behind this is the mayor of this town in London, who actually is a Muslim, and he made a statement on September 22nd, just a few months back, and he says this: "It is a reality, I'm afraid, that London, New York, and other major cities around the world have got to be prepared for these sorts of things," Khan told the Evening Standard. And he said that this is part and parcel to living in a big city. Now, let's get this right now, what we're talking about here. He's telling us this is a part of everyday way of life. How does that sound to you? That we're just going to have to get used to having these terrorist attacks in our cities. And it just so happens that the main terror attack that took place was in his city. Now, how do you think the people felt there? Despite all these warnings that are going on, most of Europe has pursued the open borders, including France, Germany, the UK, and as we found out recently, even Switzerland is facing unprecedented evil rising in the streets, where the people have to live in abject fear to be able to walk at night to protect themselves, especially the women in those societies. Additionally, they have pursued those who oppose this position as hateful and evil. For example, this program would be considered, in their eyes, a very hateful, bigoted program, because we spoke out for what's going on. Now, this is a picture, all right, so this is a picture that you're looking up on the screen here that was done in 2011. 2011, Islam will dominate the world. Now, I've had this in my files because we began focusing on this as early as 2006. So I have archived a lot of information over the past 10 years, 11 years. And amazing is that this picture was filmed, you see the hat? In the UK. Despite the warnings, despite the evil that's coming out, they still want to maintain open borders and just get along with the evil. Here's what I want to bring out. Islam will not relent. They will not stop. They will not give in. In Genesis 16, we need to go back to the source of where all this comes from. If you can't understand the source of what's going on, you can never resolve the issue. In the book of Genesis, we find the beginning of the roots of Muslim in the Islam nations back to Genesis 16, verse 11. The angel of the Lord said to her, speaking of Haggai, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your afflictions. Now, this is coming from God's holy word, all right? So you be ready for this. He shall be a wild man. What are we looking at when we see this radical Islam and this evil that's taking place? It is like you're looking at wild men. I mean, they have no sense of reality of right and wrong, just hatred and evil. His hand shall be against every man, and God says, in his hand, and every man's hand against him. Excuse me. So what God's holy word is telling us from the very beginning of this nation is that it would be evil, it would be a wild man, and he would be against every man on the face of the earth. And the truth is, if they're not fighting with the rest of the world, they're fighting with one another. Now, let's carry this one step further. This was an article that just came out March 23rd by Judith Bergman of the Gatestone Institute. She has been doing research in Canada, and what usually happens in Canada seems to filtrate into America within a matter of months or years. She has got tapes of the mosque, and what they're saying, and they're teaching their people is penetrating into the society of where they live. Now look what it says here. O Allah, count their number, slay them one by one, and spare not one of them. This is being taught in the mosque. This is off of a tape that she's got the recording, and you can go online and you can get it, of what they're teaching their people. In the bottom it talks about who this man is. He's an imam from the Toronto Mosque, and it says on the video, slay them one by one, spare not one of them. Give us victory over the disbelieving people. Give victory to Islam. Purify the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews. So now we get into another crux of a deeper issue of hate that's coming out that's going unnoticed in the terrorism. This is very similar to Psalm 83. Now just let me read you just a couple of verses way back at the time of King David, because what we're looking at today is not new. This has been going on from the beginning of time, from Abraham. All right, so in Psalm 83, I will pick up in verse 3. It says, they have taken crafty counsel against your people, have consulted against the hidden ones, and they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, for they have consulted together with one consent, and they are confederate against you. That is what's going on now, is that as they confederate against what they call the infidels, which is America, and especially the Jews. So what we're looking at today, and it's not new. It has been going on. And I'm calling this the quiet terrorism, because what they're doing is they're creating a terrorist mentality to infiltrate into society from the littlest of the children to the grown-ups, to begin to destroy not just Christians, but especially Jews. Let me continue in this. The political establishment, this is continuing in the same article, the political establishment also does not seem concerned that imams, these are the religious leaders of their day, in other words, while they're talking about us being a hate-filled, bigoted people, they're letting this go by. So they're not, and what she's saying is they're not concerned, that the establishment does not seem concerned that imams, or saying that the Islamic ruling that allows slavery to still be enforced. So they still allow slavery to go in force, even in the mosque in Canada, as well as in other parts of the country. And meanwhile, she went on to say that statistics show that when it comes to hate crimes, Jews are by far a more targeted group. In other words, these are the ones that the Muslim people are trying to destroy. They hate them, as we've seen is in Psalm 83. The mayor of Brampton, Ontario, Linda Jeffrey, was also seemingly unconcerned about the calls in Toronto to murder Jews. So openly now, in the mosque, the imams are teaching in prayers to actually go out and kill Jews. So we're seeing this quiet escalation of what I call a quiet terrorism beginning to rise up around the world. Going on, the imams in Canadian mosques have been inciting the killing of the infidels, primarily the Jews, for years. This agitation appears to have no visible impact on the Canadian parliamentarians, which is evidently too busy with petitions and motions banning alleged Islamophobia. It is right before everyone's eyes. What are we looking at here? Is while they're silencing people who speak up against the evil, they're condemning those who speak up, and they're allowing that this hate continue to grow and to permeate around the country. This quiet terrorism is gaining ground around the globe and is going almost unreported. Now, here's my point to bringing all this out. The terrorism in the Bible. Let me begin with a question. Are we witnessing a pattern that the Bible has revealed throughout time? What would that pattern be? For example, how does Satan know he has but a short time? How does Satan know he has but a short time? When we look at the history throughout the Bible, we see that God uses or brings about world conditions that bring prophetic events to fulfillment. All right, before we bring this to a close, let me explain what I'm talking about here. In 1947 and 1948, God brought about the nation of Israel, a modern-day nation of Israel in the Middle East. That was required to fulfill prophecy if they were going to control Jerusalem. Every time we begin to see God bringing about a fulfillment of prophecy, Satan is there. It began all the way back years before with Adolf Hitler beginning to kill all the Jews who merged with the Muslims to try to stop this from taking place in Jerusalem. We've seen it again with the war that Israel and all these nations came against them in 1967 when they took over Jerusalem. We have a better picture of what took place when we go all the way back to when God was about to bring Israel out of Egypt. Satan was there when he tried to destroy Moses. We saw when God was about to bring Jesus Christ to his birth, we saw Satan again try to stop it at the beginning by trying to kill that baby at that time of Christ. And we will see it one more time before the return of Jesus Christ, when Satan will again rise up, knowing he has but a short time, when he will again strike out to destroy the firstborn with Jesus Christ at the return. What we're seeing now, as I ask the question, are we beginning now to see the pattern of this rise of evil because Satan knows he has but a short time and will begin to try to destroy and thwart God's plan? Well, we'll talk more about that in the sermon that I'm going to deliver right here on the first day of Unleavened Bread this year. All right, now before we take a break, we have a guest come in town today. Mr. Doug McKinney is in town. We're going to come back. We watch this little video on trust, and when we come back, we'll have our guest with us who's going to tell us about the congregation he pastors up in Tennessee. And take a look at this little video, and we'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to everyone. We're back here. We're at the portion of our show with our guest in town today, Mr. Doug McKinney. He is from Tennessee. We call out our Chattanooga congregation, where they actually meet in Whitwell, Tennessee. Doug, welcome to New Orleans.
Thank you, Tom.
Doug was in town this weekend, delivered a sermon message for our congregation, and we kind of threw him under the bus here at the last minute and asked him to sit down a little bit and tell us a little bit about himself, to get you to know him, and a little bit about the congregation. Doug, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in the church for a long time now.
Yeah, about 35 years, give or take a few months.
And basically your whole family was practically...
At one time, during the worldwide era, my entire family was in the church. I have 2 sisters, a brother. My 2 sisters, between them, have 5 daughters. My mom, my dad, everybody was... stayed worldwide until around 95.
Well, to 95. Well, we have an unusual meeting with Doug. You've been with us 3 years? About 3 years now?
Yeah, a little over now.
Is our congregation up in Chattanooga, we really couldn't get to visit with them too often. They didn't have a speaker to go up there, and I couldn't get there too often. And they called me up one day and says, well, there's a gentleman up here who can come and speak. He's a nice guy, and can we have him? I said, sure, come on up. Tell him come on up. And he found himself a home. He's been with us ever since. It's like, it's a terrible analogy, but this is country. It's like we took in a stray, and he never left.
I teach you wanna.
No, but anyway, tell us about the congregation up there.
If you don't know the congregation, and most of the brethren do, but it's just a group of the most loving people that you could probably ever come to know, which is the primary reason I'm still with them. Like you said, they invited me with another group, but they invited me to come by and speak, and you know, I prayed about it, and I felt God led me to the group, and it was one of those situations. I know everybody's been there. When you walk in and the first time you shake hands and meet the first person, you just feel at home. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just everyone made me feel at home, and invited me back. Made sure that I felt welcome to come back, and have been welcomed every time I've been there for around 3.5 years now. Well,
Doug's actually taken over as Minister of Records for us for Chattanooga and working with the congregation. I've got some slides here. We were up there last year, and this congregation is a really special, warm place in our heart. This was their 15th reunion that they were actually having when we went up there. And we did 2 things. We went up there this past summer to fellowship, but to celebrate their 15th year reunion in their building that they had actually began buying, that we actually took over in 2006. And to do this, we actually paid off the deed, and for the church, this was the first church that we actually be able to merge into an agreement with a local congregation to help buy a building that the church owns that they can meet now absolutely free. And so one of the things I've always hoped for, has been one of my desires, that we can get more congregations to be able to get their own buildings and places to meet with.
Well, that's, if you've never had the luxury of that, it is a luxury, because so many years, as most everybody knows, meeting with Worldwide, it was always rent this building, rent that building. And we have had situations in groups since then where, you know, maybe you're meeting in a motel conference room. Well, then you come time to rent for the holy days. Well, that just happens to be a high conference time for companies and people. And next thing you know, you're out of a place to meet with really no notice. And you're scrambling around just trying to get a place to meet for a holy day. And in fact, we're running into that with the other independent group that I associate with off and on. So.
Well, what you may not realize is that when we got this building, in fact, this is a picture of the building that when we first bought it back in 2006. We actually held our first conference in that building back in 2006. And if you look at the building, it has a steeple on it. One of the members from New Orleans who was trying to duplicate what we were doing here from 1996, actually moved to that area, and he began to duplicate the same thing. And he found that building. Right after this conference, we had a group of men came up, and tore that steeple down, and we burned it. So that building is up there today, but it no longer has a steeple. That steeple is actually gone. So it's a little country building. It's a little bit hard to find, but they got it really reasonable. But now it's always theirs, and so nobody can take them out of that. The picture that we have here is the founding members of that congregation that are still there, and some of them have died, some have moved away, but those are your founding members who are there. And then I got some pictures. That's Doug with my wife. We took a champagne toast to celebrate the burning of the mortgage, so to speak, as they call it now. And that's the congregation that's there now, when they all can get there.
Right.
So you want to have anything to say about this?
Well, actually, I think there's a few that are maybe even not in that picture that come from time to time. We, as a whole, on the holy days, we can get about 20 members there for a holy day service, but like you said, it is somewhat remote. And the biggest part of our congregation is actually from Alabama. The northeast corner there off the tip of Sand Mountain, a large part of the congregation drives a relative distance. And of course, I drive nearly 130 miles in one direction to get there, but it's worth every mile of it.
It's worth every mile. Well, we just wanted to share that with you and share it with Doug. So, and Doug's in an area in Alabama, so that we're getting more and more people all the time asking, is there a church in my area? And so we're hoping that we're going to be able to put Doug to work and be able to send him to a lot more places to visit with a lot more brethren. So if you're in northern Alabama, southern Tennessee, we'll got his information on the website, so you can get in touch with Doug. You got his email address, so give him a call. Keep him busy and put him to work.
Well, I don't mean to seem nonchalant, but you know my saying, have oil, we'll travel.
Have what?
Have oil, we'll travel.
Have oil, we'll travel. For those who may know what he's referring to, he's referring to anointing oil. In fact, he caught me off guard at first, too. Have oil, we'll travel. And he actually does do that. When brethren are sick, you spend a lot of time visiting with the brethren.
It doesn't matter to me what congregation they belong to, and I have had people call me that don't even belong to one of the churches of God as we recognize them, but they do recognize the need, and they recognize the calling of the Scriptures for anointing when they're sick. And I have had numerous different people contact me and to come and anoint them when they're sick, and it's not my place to say no.
And that's one of the things we found with Doug when we first got in. He was very people-oriented. And Doug, we really appreciate all the love and the support that you give to everyone.
For bringing me in.
And you'll be down here again.
Oh, sure.
We'll be down here again. Well, listen, before we wrap this up today, I apologize. I'm fighting a cold, so I didn't feel it was as exciting as it could have been in the programs in the past, but we really wanted to take advantage of this while Doug was here. So now let me bring this back to now wrapped up the program, because we got a lot of things I want to share with you here. And so just as a reminder, if you're not on the email alert list, because we get new people writing in all the time, how do I get on the email alert list? Go to the website. On the upper right-hand corner of the website, the God's Unchanging Word, you'll find this little box, and it says, sign up for the email alerts. Just click on that box. It'll take you right here. All you need to do is put your email address right there, and you are done. Every Friday in your mailbox around 6 o'clock, you will get an email alert of news nuggets and insights of things that we're focused on for that week to keep you posted of what we're doing and the news that are important from a biblical standpoint. Now, on the website this week, we have what's called From the Vault. From 9 years ago, it's called The Greatest Deception. It's the greatest deception ever perpetrated on mankind, and it's dealing with Easter versus Passover. It's on the website. You can get it now, or in 2 weeks, it'll be mailed out just before the holy days so that you can view it at home or view it with your congregations. In addition, oh, I forgot, I have the picture here for you. This is a little picture that we put on the web about the greatest fraud, just to give you a little insight to wet your whistle on what's on there. We also have 2 DVDs that are in the mail this week. By the time you get this News Nuggets and Insight, you should have these DVDs in your hands. The first one was Jehoshaphat Part 2, and it's called King of Judah, Changing the Culture of a Nation. And the second one is Looking Forward to Passover by Bobby Weber, who delivered that sermon right here just a week ago. That is in the mail to you right now. So you should be getting those. If you're not on the mailing list, be sure to write in and get on the mailing list. As a reminder, we'll be talking a little more about the Exodus series that we delivered last year. All right, the Exodus series is a 9-point Bible study series that we're going to put up each week, information about each one of the series that you can go into and use it as a Bible study tool, just like you used to do with the old Worldwide Church of God Bible study correspondence courses, where you can get your DVD, get to a scripture and pause your DVD, go into the Bible, read the Bible, write the scripture down, and you will begin to get more understanding than you ever dreamed possible. And that's the way we intended this series to be done, is the 9-point series. Oh, by the way, we're offering in the mail this week, coming up in the card with the newsletter, a new addition to the Exodus series, and it's called The Spoils of Egypt. So it will be an addition to the Exodus series done in the same format as we did with these 9-part series. So return your card and get that sermon coming out. It'll be ready in 2 to 4 weeks from the time you get that card. Countdown to Passover, we're getting very close now. Passover is April 10th. It is observed the evening before on Sunday night right after sunset. Unleavened bread is 11th through the 17th. The holy days on the first and last holy days, which is Tuesday, April 11th, and Monday, April 17th. Also on the website, the webmasters have put up, this I call him webmaster, that's my brother Jeff, has put up the place for you if you need unleavened bread recipes. You can go right to the front page in the bottom corner. There's a button you can click and take you to tons and tons of unleavened recipes so that you can have a great time baking for this year for unleavened bread. And wrapping it up now is the quarterly will be put into the mail this week. By the time you get this News Nuggets and Insights, you will probably have the quarterly in your hands. Featured stories this year is Passover, Easter, which is biblical, and the other story focusing on the time is Risen, and was focused upon the Christ who is actually risen and relating it to you and I. Also in the same edition, a little series that Audrey, my wife, writes. It's called My Mom Used to Say. And it's become quite popular. In fact, some of the ladies have said she ought to do a little book on that. And it says, quote me, but don't misquote me. We also have 2 articles from Anna Salmons on, one is in What Should We Learn from the Life of Jonah, and Do You Have a Willing Heart? So lots of information in addition to these articles. It's in the quarterly. Well, that's about it. Wrapping up News Nuggets and Insights for this week. Thanks for tuning in again. God be with you. Have any questions, write to us. Looking forward to seeing you again next week as we zero in on Passover. Doug, thanks again for being here. And until next time, God be with you all, and have a great week.